Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for this Friday, July 20th, finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Temperature and rainfall outlooks this morning, still clearly a lack of any heat in the 2 week forecast for the Corn Belt and nearby areas. A number of days, especially in the western Corn Belt, featuring below normal readings. 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day rainfall forecast. My 6 to 10 day forecast has trended a little wetter today, not nearly as much of the Corn Belt in below normal rainfall. 11 to 15 day rainfall forecast relatively similar to yesterday, but as always, not a lot of confidence in the details that far out. QPF discussion for the 1 to 5 day time frame. I'm not going to be having any disagreements versus the rainfall amounts shown in this map. Clearly a situation where some very nice rains are going to be falling in the eastern and northeastern portion of the Corn Belt, especially for today through the weekend. Very nice amounts, 1 to 2 inches locally, even heavier than that for southern Michigan, central and eastern Indiana, and into Ohio. A lot of the central third of the Corn Belt going to be dry during this period, and then far western portion of the Corn Belt and into portion of the Plain States seeing most of that rainfall for Monday and Tuesday. For the day 6 to 7 time frame, a situation where the bulk of the Corn Belt is going to be staying dry for Wednesday and Thursday of next week, but some nice rains likely going to be falling in that period in portions of the Central Plains. Afternoon high temperatures yesterday, relatively mild conditions yesterday across the Corn Belt, but a real scorcher in the Southern Plains. All sorts of record-setting heat there. A number of places seeing highs yesterday of 110 to as warm as 113. 18-hour rainfall totals through 1 o'clock this morning. Some nice rains across a good portion of the central Corn Belt yesterday in the midst of a lot of tornadic weather, especially in Iowa. Probably heard about the tornadoes that hit Marshalltown and Pella in Iowa during the last 24 hours. You can see that rainfall on the radar, estimated rainfall since 7 o'clock yesterday morning. Again, some very nice rains across a good portion of Minnesota, eastern Iowa, and into even some sections of Missouri, with rainfall starting to get into the eastern Corn Belt here early this morning as well. You can see the upper level low pressure system responsible for the rains pretty clearly on the radar this morning. You can see the rains spinning around the upper level low that is located right now near the borders of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. That upper level low also creating a band of thunderstorm activity in southern and eastern portions of the Corn Belt this morning as well. So looking at 500 millibars, again, there is that upper level low located this morning near the border area of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Going to be indicative of quite a bit of shower and thunderstorm activity for today. I can see that the Storm Prediction Center getting awfully worried today about a pretty big outbreak of severe weather, probably a situation where they saw how this weather system produced such strong tornadic thunderstorm activity in Iowa yesterday. Don't want to get caught with their guard down today and are going for an extensive area of slight, enhanced, even moderate risk of severe weather for today across the eastern Corn Belt and into portions of the Mid-South. Rainfall is going to be continuing across the eastern portion of the Corn Belt right through the end of the weekend. You can see that by the time we get to 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, that upper level low is still producing rainfall at that time in far eastern portions of the Corn Belt. So if we look at rainfall for today through 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday, you can see a situation where the models are in very good agreement that eastern and northeastern portions of the Corn Belt are looking at a solid rainfall event during this time frame. Coverage should not be an issue, should be excellent coverage of rainfall amounts of at least a half inch. A lot of areas 1 to 2 inches, especially good rains going to be seen in this time frame for southern Michigan, central and eastern Indiana, and for a good portion of Ohio. As far as the rainfall forecast for the work week period of next week, any rainfall during that time frame, at least through Thursday anyway, is going to be confined to far western and far eastern areas. For far eastern areas, most of that rainfall is going to be in central and eastern portions of Ohio. For far western areas, a lot of that rainfall is going to be found over the Dakotas into Nebraska and also into northwestern sections of Kansas, where some nice rains are probably going to be falling there starting as early as Monday, and probably a daily threat of rainfall there right through the Thursday time frame of next week. But again, in between, the bulk of the Corn Belt looking at completely dry conditions for Monday through Thursday of next week, and of course preceding that is completely dry weather for today and the weekend across all of the western Corn Belt. With regards to the temperature forecast, still a situation where very little in the way of heat is going to be seen throughout the 2 week time frame. Probably some modestly above normal temperatures in eastern and southeastern portion of the Corn Belt for Tuesday and Wednesday. But other than that, that's the basically the extent of any above normal temperatures in the Corn Belt forecast for the next 2 weeks. High temperature or temperature anomalies for today. You can see that quite a bit of near and below normal temperatures across the Corn Belt, especially cool in the west. Searing heat going to be continuing for today in Oklahoma and Texas. More 105 to 110 degree readings. Probably the warmest part of the 2 week forecast for that area is for today through Monday. But even for the rest of the 2 week time frame, above normal temperatures are going to be dominating southern Oklahoma and areas to the south of there. But for the Corn Belt and areas surrounding that, a continual lack of extreme heat, or really any heat at all, for the duration of the 2 week time frame. You can see temperature anomalies as we get towards July 27th. By the time we get to Monday in the northern plains, by the time we get to Tuesday and for several days beyond that, that will probably be the coolest part of the 2 week forecast. You can see that temperature anomalies for next Friday running easily below normal across the western Corn Belt as well as the central and northern plains, even an area of much below normal readings at that time in the far western Corn Belt and portions of the central plains states. Now, as far as the rainfall forecast is concerned longer term, I still do believe that we are looking at somewhat of an increase in rainfall chances for the final 3 days of the 6 to 10 day period and into the 11 to 15 day time frame. As is usually the case, though, on a rainfall forecast that far out, there are some discrepancies in the models, and that makes it somewhat of a low confidence forecast. What I'm showing here on the left is the European model from this morning and its surface features as of 7 o'clock in the afternoon next Friday, and the GFS model at that same time. A GFS model like yesterday's output from that model is still suggesting a relatively decent rainfall system for the Corn Belt starting for around next Friday and possibly continuing for the rest of the 6 to 10 day time frame. The European operational model showed a nice rainfall event in that same time frame with its 2 runs from yesterday, but here this morning you can see that it has become a lot more pessimistic on rainfall chances in that period. Now, why has the European model become so much more pessimistic? Well, you can look at its 500 millibar charts from a similar time frame. Looking at 7 o'clock in the afternoon for next Friday, the same time frame that the previous slide showed its surface features from. Here's the European model this morning. Really, when you look at its upper level features, really just showing a broad area of a trough of low pressure at that time, not indicative of any sort of a strong feature. Look at what it showed yesterday afternoon, though, a very distinct upper level disturbance at that time over the Dakotas that would be drifting southeastward and be producing some rainfall chances in the Corn Belt. So pretty easy to see why the European model has lost its rainfall threat and its output this morning. Had a very distinct upper level disturbance over the Dakotas for late on Friday, and yesterday's run has completely lost that feature on its output this morning. So where does that leave me as far as the rainfall forecast is concerned? Well, it is generally speaking a situation where I like to use ensembles when it comes to rainfall forecast for the 6 to 10 and 11 to 15 day time frames. And if you look at the ensemble rainfall forecast this morning, they all have trended somewhat wetter in that period today versus what they showed yesterday. Overall, the driest ensemble forecast for that period would be the European ensemble, but it has indeed gone a little bit wetter than what it showed yesterday, and it's a little bit wetter than the European operational. Here's the Canadian ensemble in the upper right, certainly wetter than it showed yesterday, and a wetter forecast than what the European ensemble shows. Wettest model this morning as far as any ensemble is concerned, clearly the GFS ensemble, which shows a pretty solid rainfall event in the 6 to 10 day time frame. Bottom line this morning with regards to the 6 to 10 day forecast, we're going to be starting out dry in that period for Wednesday and Thursday. I do believe that there are some rainfall chances for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which would represent the final 3 days of the 6 to 10 day period. A solid rainfall event, a broad coverage rainfall event, very difficult to tell at this time given that we're in a northwesterly flow aloft. That's a weather pattern that the models typically do not handle very well at all with regards to distinct features that far out. But given the wetter trend of the ensemble forecast today, that's why I have trended my own forecast a little bit wetter, going for a broader area of near normal rainfall in the 6 to 10 day period in the Corn Belt and a much smaller area of any below normal rainfall for that same period. Looking out longer term for the beginning of the 11 to 15 day period, you you can see that still a northwesterly flow aloft in the Corn Belt, big dome of high pressure still centered in southwestern portion of the nation. For latter portion of the 11 to 15 day period, still a northwesterly flow aloft in the Corn Belt, dome of high pressure in southwestern portion of the nation, indicative of a weather pattern in the 11 to 15 day period that would feature no big heat in the Corn Belt and would likely feature additional rainfall chances to some degree. Internationally for this morning, wanted to show you some rainfall totals across former Soviet Union corn areas for the past 6 days. Note that we have seen some wonderful rains during that time frame in a good portion of Central District and into a good portion of Southern District as well. As far as the forecast is concerned for the next 2 weeks, still looking at above normal rainfall all across the corn areas of the former Soviet Union during that time frame. A lot of that rainfall going to be occurring during the near term. For Europe, though, their forecast continues to dry out. Note the big area of below normal rainfall going to be seen over the next 2 weeks across a good portion of France, Germany, and nearby areas. A lot of that area, in fact, seeing nothing at all in the way of rainfall from later on today right through the end of the 10-day time frame. And that's also going to be an area that is going to be heating up. Above normal temperatures going to be widespread all across Europe for the next 2 weeks, but especially in latter portion of the 6 to 10-day time frame and into the 11 to 15-day period. Looking at high temperatures for July 28th or a week from tomorrow, you can see that there is an extensive area of 90-plus degree heat at that time in Western Europe. Some of that 90-degree heat probably getting started there by as early as next Thursday. 10-day rainfall for 10-day rainfall forecast for spring wheat areas of the former Soviet Union, indicating very limited amounts of rainfall there. Anything that is decent and just confined to far western and far eastern areas. The forecast continues to improve and shows some consistency for corn and soybean areas of China, looking at near to above normal rainfall in Heilongjiang. That rainfall evenly spread out throughout the 2-week forecast. Forecast continues to trend a little bit wetter for corn and soybean areas of the southern portion of Manchuria and into the North China Plain, and that is all still due to what should be the remnants of Tropical Storm 12W moving through that area for later on this weekend through early next week. There's the path of the storm right now. Once we get beyond Monday or Tuesday, it should take a turn more to the northeast. As is usually the case, the bulk of the rainfall from any sort of a tropical system is going to be falling to the east of the storm track. Should be some very nice rains across a good portion of the North China Plain corn and soybean areas for Sunday and Monday, and then into southern portion of the Manchurian corn and soybean areas into the middle of next week. All of that rainfall, of course, very important and very beneficial. The forecast overall for the next 2 weeks featuring all sorts of above normal temperatures all across the corn and soybean areas of China. For the Canadian prairies, near to below normal rainfall for the next 2 weeks, especially limited rain is going to be seen in southern Saskatchewan and into southern Alberta. Much cooler air moving into the Canadian prairies starting on Sunday. Forecast still quite dry for Australian wheat areas. Any decent rains for the next 2 weeks confined to small portion of the wheat areas of Western Australia and Victoria. New South Wales being especially dry during that period. Monsoon looks unchanged in India. Below normal rainfall for southern India. Some very good rains further north into Gujarat, southern Rajasthan, and into Madhya Pradesh. That's what I have for your Friday. Everyone have themselves a good day and an even greater weekend.